Hello everyone, this is Taliesin McKnight. Thank you for joining me today. Today, I'd like to cover quite a bit of ground. Today, I'd like to examine the Kabbalistic concept of emanationism, the origin of evil, the klipot, the shells, and the gradual unfoldment of the deity and the Sephirot. And we will also examine the difference between the vast countenance, macroprosopis, and the lesser countenance, microprosopis. First of all, we need to understand what emanationism is. And we need to understand Ein Sof. First of all, Ein Sof is the Kabbalistic term for the absolute. The absolute. In the Kabbalah, Ein Sof in Hebrew means without limit. It is limitlessness. This is the true nature of God. Ein Sof is limitlessness. There is no distinctions within Ein Sof. Ein Sof is not white or black, because that would be a limit. It would be a distinction. Ein Sof is not male or female or hot or cold, because these are all limits or distinctions. For our human minds to wrap our heads around something, we generally need to have some kind of an attribute. There are no attributes within Ein Sof. Ein Sof has sometimes been called nothingness or the not, although it's more rightly said to be the absence of things. It's not nothing, it's the absence of things, because Ein Sof is not really empty per se, it is a fullness, because creation sprang forth from Ein Sof. And in creation, you see all kinds of colors and things and solar systems and all of that. These have come out of Ein Sof. These were not created ex nihilo. These were not created out of nothing. They were created out of something. They were created out of a fullness. As I said, Ein Sof is colorless. To use this analogy, we have different colors like red, green, blue, yellow. These have all sprung forth from Ein Sof, and they all are revelations of the potentiality of Ein Sof. And yet Ein Sof has no color. So Ein Sof is timeless, it is spaceless, it is without distinctions, it is without limit. This is the absolute concept of deity. Now, how do we bridge the gap between the physical world and this unknowable absolute? How do we reconcile this unknowable Godhead with the deity of Scriptures? Different religions and different systems have come to the same problem. To look at other systems, other religious systems of the world, Hinduism has absolute reality, Brahman, but then there are different revelations of that, different deities. Some systems have reconciled this with intermediaries. Kabbalah, this is not something that could very easily be done within Judaism. Judaism solved the problem with emanationism, which certain other religious systems have done, if we could be allowed to do a little bit of comparative religion. Gnosticism did the same thing. Gnosticism also had this concept of an undivided unity, and it reconciled the gap, it bridged the gap with creation through emanationism. So Gnosticism has done a similar thing, and so has certain forms of Sufism within Islam. So Judaism, Christianity, and Islam have all had emanationism as a solution to the problem. So the 10 Sephirot could be seen as a gradual process of unfoldment and revelation of God. The 10 Sephirot could be seen as the gradual concealment or limitation of the infinite light. Notice that there are 10 Sephirot. The Sefer Yetzirah, the book of formation, says that there are 10 and not 9, 10 and not 11. You'll notice that the number 10 is also the basis of our decimal system. And also 10, in a sense, returns to 1, because 1 plus 0 equals 1. So Ein Sof could be symbolized by the numbers, by 0. 0 is the naught. It has no definitions, no limits. This is 0. You'll notice that within the Arabic numerical system that we use today, 0 is symbolized by a circle. It is indefinable. Its circumference is everywhere. It has no, I forget how they say that. Anyways, that was supposed to be really awesome. Anyways, okay. So, 0 is the naught. This is Ein Sof. Now, the first limitation of Ein Sof, the first stage or process leading down to the material world, is Keter. Keter is often called within the Kabbalah the primal point. In fact, it is called this within the Sefer HaZohar, the Book of Splendor. The primal point. This is the condensation of Ein Sof within itself, forming Keter. This is sometimes called the most concealed of the concealed, or the most ancient of the ancient. This is Keter, which means crown. The number ascribed to it is 1. Keter is in a sense just like Ein Sof. It is undivided unity. There are no distinctions within Keter. Keter is said within the Zohar to be half concealed and half unconcealed. While microprosopis, which is Tiferet, and or the 6 lower Sephirot between Chesed and Yesod, microprosopis is said to face forward. But the greater countenance, which is Keter, is said to only have the right side. Keter is, in a sense, Ein Sof. There are no distinctions. You'll notice that Keter on the Tree of Life is above both pillars. Although Keter on the Tree of Life is in the point of equilibrium on the middle pillar, it is above it is above Chokmah and Binah, because there are as yet no opposing forces. Although it is equilibrium, it is not a balance by this versus that. So, Keter is ascribed the number 1. You'll notice that 1, of course, is undivided unity. If you multiply 1 times 1, you get 1. If you divide 1 times 1, you still get 1. There are no distinctions within Keter. It is neither male nor female. And this is the vast countenance, Arik Anpin. Chokmah is ascribed the number 2. Now, from an undivided unity, how do you get the number 2? This is, in a sense, Pythagorean mathematics, in a sense. The number 2 comes from 1 by reflection of itself. While Keter is a primal point, Chokmah, the number 2, introduces duality. It is the first distinguished duality. Chokmah, which means wisdom, often called the father, the masculine principle. Chokmah is the burst or desire to create. It is sometimes seen as the will of the Godhead and within man. You'll notice that when you have 2 points, the number 2, it creates a line. This is a ray of energy. It is also phallic in a sense. Phallic. And this is the rush of energy, the desire to create. This is chokmah. Now, a rush of energy, chokmah, the masculine principle, is does not really reach its full. A burst of energy is not, how do I say this? It is only potential until it has a place to manifest. It needs a destination, a container. Binah, the female principle, the 3 points of the supernal triad, creates a triangle. This could be seen as Beit Elohim, the house of God. This is the receptacle. While Binah represents the intellectual powers, the divine plan. This is the intelligence and the actual mind of the Godhead. So far, we are only taking a look at the supernals. The supernals all exist within the mind of God. And for the first time, we have introduced a duality. From the primal unity of Ein Sof and of Keter, we now have a duality between Chokmah and Binah. From these, we get Chesed. Chesed is kindness or mercy. It's better translated as kindness, as mercy is actually rachamim in Hebrew. The word chesed means kindness. So even though most people say, oh, chesed means mercy, well, actually it means kindness. It is love. This is the number 4, which is a foundation. 4 is a foundation, just as you have 4 elements, 4 directions. The foundation of the world is based on love. Now, what happens when you just have an expansion? You need to have a limit. Gavura is severity. This is placing a limit. The Zohar beautifully illustrates that if it wasn't for Gavura, the limitation, then the universe would just keep expanding. And this is the introduction of the firmament in the heavens to divide the waters above and below. This is Gavura. Tiferet is the reconciliation of those 2 forces, and it is also microprosopis. Now, what I will say here is that the number 10 is the basis of our decimal system. The number 10, which manifests finally, we're skipping ahead, in Malkut. Malkut is the finished product. Malkut is the material world in which we exist. And so you could see that creation follows a series of steps or stages, sometimes represented by Seder Histalshalut, or the chain of being, the order of being, Seder Histalshalut, which are the worlds of Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiyah. Now, so we have this gradual concealment and restriction on the infinite divine light, Ein Sof Or. Now, how do we get evil? Malkut, according to the Zohar, now some people that haven't really studied very much try to say, oh, the klipot, that's just some modern thing we came up with. The klipot is found in the Zohar, the shells. This is how the Kabbalah often explains the existence of evil in the world and also evil spirits. The shells, the klipot. Now, I don't want to go too deeply in that, but we will say that evil, the principle of evil, is not a contrary force. The Kabbalah does not view good and evil as opposites like light and dark, like we have in Christianity. The Kabbalah views evil, darkness, as the absence of light. The gradual concealment and limitation of the infinite light. When you limit something, eventually it becomes degraded. For example, this is kind of a weird example, but it's the only thing that's coming to mind to explain it. You know, you give a plant lots of water, it flourishes. When you limit the amount of water, the plant begins to wilt. So in the same way, when you are enough removed from the source, then you get degradation. Let's say a battery or a source of power runs an electronic device. Over time, removed from the source, when the battery starts to run out, the phone goes dead. So, ignorance is not its own force as opposed to knowledge. Ignorance is the absence of knowledge. Darkness is simply the absence of light. Now, I could prove this. If I turn off this light, it's dark. But if I light my lighter, then suddenly there's light. Bam! But I've never seen darkness overcome the light, because it is simply the absence of light. So the origin of evil and the klipot, the shells, according to the Kabbalah, is the gradual degradation. And this is also the origin of our own imperfections. And it's sometimes said that the fall of man, the fall of Adam, was the fall into Malkut. And this is also the realm of the exiled divine presence, or the Shekinah, which has some similarities with Sophia within the Gnostic tradition. And so this is part 1. YouTube restricts my time, so I have to do videos in 20-minute increments. So in this video, we have followed the Godhead from Ein Sof down through the 10 Sephirot in the material world. And we see that according to the Kabbalah, the origin of evil is not that it's this opposing force. It's the gradual restriction. And so we have fallen to the bottom, and now we have to go back home. Now in my next video, I will finish, and we will look at the path back up to the source, and we will also examine the difference between the vast countenance and the lesser countenance, which is an important concept within the Zohar. So anyways, and it's found within the Book of Concealed Mysteries within the Zohar. It's also found within the Idra Rabbah and the Idra Zuta. These are all parts of the Zohar that deal with the distinction between the macro prosopis, the vast countenance, and the lesser countenance. And so now we will continue with part 2.